Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sergio Kech, the Revenue Cycle Guy, welcoming you to a I Love Friday episode. Today, I have a friend. His name is Jonathan Fanning. He's a Tech Talk number one winner, author, and also founder or Who Are You Becoming Institute. Jonathan, welcome to the stage. I'd love to hear your story and help us explore the question, who are you becoming?
Absolutely, sure. And it's great to be with you and thanks for what you do. I love that you add value to your world, to your community, to the people around you, the people that you bump into, and even a lot of people you don't bump into probably. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I believe that if we can have an interaction and connect with someone that needs to hear a message, either um, to motivate them and change their mindset, that's what we're here for. And we'll explore some questions and things about your lens, the side from experiences that you've had. And the first question I want to ask you how did you choose to do what you do today, and how what motivates you to have the same energy and the same perspective as you did when you first started your week?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think probably all of us are in a little bit of a similar path where looking back, you can see things, but in the moment, when you're in the journey, not always see those choices. And I've had a whole bunch of what I like to call kind of frying pan moments where something happens in life and it's like you just got hit over the head with a frying pan and it gets your attention, but then you have to decide what to do with that. Because I'm actually very good at getting a wake up call and then ignoring it, then letting a week or a month or a year or 2 years go by where I say, I learned that lesson, but I did not apply any of it. And one of those, Sergio, one of those frying pan moments for me was a car accident. Pretty early in my career, I was consulting, I was doing leadership work in one of the biggest companies in the world, a Fortune 10 company. And I was traveling all over the world. And one of my trips had me on a long road trip, warm day, cold night, black ice, highway, and the car starts sliding, hits the guardrail, spins into the middle of the highway, going probably 65 miles an hour.
Mm.
And two tractor trailers just plowed through my car, one after the other. And I,
Wow.
I saw the second one coming at my door. I was in the passenger seat and I saw the second one coming at my door. I leaned away. And, they say a lot of times you have kind of like your life flashes before you. I could say, like, I saw little moments of my life in like frozen in time, and then I was unconscious for a little bit. And after that I thought like that could have been the end. And frying pan moment, and the reality is we all get them, we all get wake up calls. But that one, I thought I better do something with this. And I did not, though. For probably 2 years I didn't do. I started to say you have to chase better questions. Like that was the probably the biggest thing I thought was chase questions like, if this is the last year of your life, how do you want to spend it? Right. And then I slowly realized
Wow.
that the quality of our lives really it hinges on the quality of the questions that we pursue. It's not the questions we ask once a year, it's the questions that we like pursue in our daily rhythm, our daily routine. And I was not chasing that question all the time. And I started saying, I have to figure out a way to chase that question more regularly. And it
Wow.
slowly evolved into yeah, and it slowly evolved into this question of who are you becoming? And I started asking myself, are you more patient today than you were a year ago? Do you have more courage today than you did a year ago? Do you spend more time in meaningful relationships and connection today than you did a year ago? And Sergio, I played a lot of sports in my life, and I started to look at this process the way I look at a sport. If you want to get better at, like, I coach travel soccer, and a lot of the kids on my team are like, I can't kick with my left foot. And I look at them and I
Mm.
say, well, I mean, you can say that, and maybe it's true at this moment, but you could be better at kicking with your left foot in an hour than you are right now. And they look at me like, yeah, 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 yeah. And I said, no, I'm serious. Like, let's get a ball and let's do 100 kicks with your left foot. And,
Wow.
if they'll do it, and they'll do, let's say they do 100 kicks or 200 or 300 kicks a day with their left foot, night and day within a few weeks. Right. And it's the same with my life and your life. We forget this. Like we want it to be complicated. I'm getting a little echo here. I don't know what happened.
Oh,
Are we still good?
yeah, we're still good.
Okay, I had a little echo for
Yeah.
some reason.
Oh, that's
But
right.
yeah, but it's the same. Like we want leadership development to be complicated, and I think we want it to be complicated because then we don't have to do anything with it. When
Say
it's
that
when it's
again.
complicated, I could say, well, let
Wow.
me
That's,
study it more.
yeah.
Let me read the next 500-page book or the next book. Let me take the next course. And the answer is like, no, you and I, we need to pick a thing and find a little way to get better at it regularly, and then maybe pick a second thing, maybe pick a third thing
Wow.
eventually. But we don't do this though, and it's really I started writing out what I call a "Who Are You Becoming" plan for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not for anyone else. And eventually I started getting asked to speak about it, and I would speak about it, and I'd speak to companies and conferences and you name it. And then people would say, is this written down anywhere? And I finally said, yeah, sort of, but just for me. And then I wrote my first book, called "Who Are You Becoming?" And it's really about that. Like, do you have a process to close the gap between the person you are and the person you're capable of becoming? And you'll never get all the way there. You make some progress, then you realize that the person you could be goes up almost at the same speed that you make progress,
Wow.
maybe faster. Um,
So
but you
I
take
see
like
a key
sir,
element.
yeah,
Sorry, I see a key element
yeah,
in what you just said, closing that gap. But what makes closure of the gap? Is it just obtaining a new certification, obtaining a new bookcase for all the books that you've read? Like what
yeah.
causes the change?
Yeah, it's what I started to realize is that it's two things. You need sort of a thing you're working on. Like I asked people two questions: what are you working on, and how's it going really? And I add the
Mm,
word really because usually we don't like to answer the word really. We like to answer the how's it going pretty good.
yeah.
And that's not really the answer. And so one of the pillars I picked, Sergio, simple one, I picked this idea of courage, and I said, like, how would you practice courage daily? Right. And I actually started it. I have two daughters. I started it when my oldest daughter was about 6 years old, almost 6 years old. And I was traveling all over the world at the time. And on one of my trips on the way back, I started asking this question of, if my kids only learn one thing in growing up in my house, what would I like it to be? Which is a beautiful question to ask as a parent, but also as a person. If your friends only learn one thing from spending time with you, what would you like it to be? Or if you're managing a project, or if you're a CEO or a CFO, if your team, if you're a frontline supervisor in a restaurant, retail store, you name it. If the people who spend time with you only learn one thing from those interactions, what would you like it to be? And
Wow.
I'm flying back. I was with a big group of entrepreneurs in Australia for about a week, and I'm flying back from this trip, and I'm just thinking, like, I'd like it to be courage. I'd love my kids to learn to have courage. So that next morning, I woke up and I was a little groggy. I'm thinking, like, yeah, courage, courage, yeah. And I told my daughter, who was not even 6 years old, I said, we're going to do Brave and Daring Day today. And this is breakfast time, and she's looking at me like, yeah, 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 yeah. And then she asked me, what is that? What do you mean? And I said, we're going to do things that you have to have courage, like you have to be brave and daring to do. And all I had done is pick the pillar. What are you working on, right? Courage,
Mm-hmm.
practicing courage. I want to have more courage today. I want to kick the ball with the left foot, right? I want to do something to develop strength and practice, exhibit courage. And then my daughter looks at me and she says, "Can I climb the thing at the park that mommy won't let me climb?"
Ooh.
And yeah. And I'm looking at her and I think she could read my mind. She said, "Oh, we don't have to tell mommy." And I thought, "Oh, great. We're gonna practice courage and deceit."
Is it all in one?
We're gonna, yeah, brave and daring and lie to your but we ended up making a list, and she was little, she was five. She drew pictures of things that would be take courage to do. And slowly I started saying, well, that you could do the same thing yourself. Like imagine it's whatever, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Imagine before you go to bed tonight, you write down two or three things that would they would move your life in a positive direction if you did them, but they would take some
Mm,
courage to do. And if I like to do that at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, because I have a lot of in my head courage at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And then the next morning I look at those things and go, wow, like this is who writes this? This is because usually they're pretty big things, you know. But
oh,
sometimes it's as simple as apologize to one person,
that's deep.
you
I
know.
mean, it's
Yeah.
different when you write them down, but I think another key element that you just mentioned is you're going to require action.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Yeah.
not just
Yeah.
say that I'm gonna practice it, but go for it.
Yeah.
Like go do it, go out and do
Yeah.
it. Man, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy when you think about this, but game changers in our lives are almost never big, complicated things. They're almost always small things that we actually weave into our lives. Like a simple example
Mm,
is take a lot of
yeah.
courage, but you and I both, and probably everyone listening, knows at least one person that if you said, "Hey, I want to practice courage daily over the next 2 weeks, every day over the next 2 weeks, will you text me once a day or at least once a week to ask me like how you doing with the courage thing?" Really,
Mm.
every one of us, I think, knows at least one person who would actually do
Oh
that.
yeah. Mm.
And you're probably thinking, should I tell them? Right, because they wouldn't let you off the hook. And that's a and you have somebody in your life who would do it with you. It's sort of like if you say January 1st, I'm going to start hitting the gym twice a week, right? And you have at least one friend who would go, "I'll go with you, and I'm not letting you not show up." And you think like, do I tell that person? I don't know.
It's scary because he's
you
gonna
know?
hold you accountable. He's gonna come wake you up early
Yeah.
in the mornings, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But if you take that question, that who are you becoming question, seriously, you start like
Mm.
pursue it. You start looking for some of the things that you need. You know it. You probably need, most of us need, I love Friday, because most of us need a Friday check-in with someone every Friday. How's it going, really? You know,
Yeah.
you said this week you were going to try to, get up early and read for 10 minutes every morning. How's it going, really? Simple thing, right? And it's not complicated. We love complicated because then it's like, okay, I got to read that next, couple hundred page book. It's on page 280 or 470, and then I can finish the book and say I did it.
Yeah.
And really more, it's what's the one thing you're going to apply regularly from, it might be one sentence in that book.
Man, I love that. I love that. So, Jonathan, tell me a little bit about, I'm pretty sure that we've all have one experience that has created a very pivotal moment in our lives. Not that it was whether we were doing something different, but it created action in from someone that did it in whether it was through recognition, sharing awards, or anything like that, that created a pivotal moment in your life and made you reflect a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a lot of those. Probably one of the best ones is I went through GE's leadership development program right out of college. And somewhere in the program, it's 2 years. It was incredible, an incredible program, mentors, and probably about halfway through the program, I started to really see that a lot of the people in the program didn't get as much out of it as they could. And I started kind of trying to figure that out. Like, why would you be in this program? It was a lot. I mean, it was every Thursday morning we were together for 4 hours, diving into a topic that connected with leadership. It could be technology, could be software, could be time management, could be motivating, could be running meetings, could be innovation. Um, and a lot of us, and here's one of the wake up calls, one of those moments. I realized that most of us, most of the time, we're not looking for a game changer for the way that we lead.
Hmm.
And it hit me that you can have the best information, you can have world class, books, trainers, classroom experiences, but if I'm not looking for a game changer, I don't find it.
Wow,
You know?
that's
Yeah.
very insightful. And how would is there any experience that you had like firsthand where we all kind of have our moments every now and then that we have like that
Mhm.
I know it all kind of thing, and
Oh
in
yeah.
in that something earlier that you mentioned, you get one of those frying pans on your head, and that makes you shift your mindset as well. I've
Mm.
had several of those, where it changes your trajectory, whether because it's from something that someone said to you, but very
Hmm.
intentional. um, Tell
Yeah.
me something about that.
I've had a few of those, but one very impactful. I was 17 years old, I think, about to turn 18, high school fresh or college freshman, and I was majoring in engineering, and my one of my professors gave us this assignment, and I was at 18, I knew everything. I was convinced that I knew everything, and when you get an assignment and you have 6 weeks to do it at age 18, and you think you know everything, you tend to do nothing for the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And that was
Oh,
exactly where I
I
was,
can relate.
you know, yeah. And then the day before, probably the evening before, and this was a test grade, 6 weeks to do it. I sat down for a few minutes and I scanned through the assignment. I didn't even read the whole assignment. I mean, ridiculous. I just went, okay, yeah, yeah, I got it. And I did what I had to do. And I invested a total, honestly, of about 2 minutes in this test grade assignment. And then the next day we're in class, and the assignment was this: we were studying engineering, principles in engineering, and we had to build something that would fly. And the assignment sheet gave us all the things you could and could not use. And it basically said that your aircraft had to be in the air. We were going to climb up on a 3-story building. Your aircraft had to be in the air for 15 seconds to get an A. 14 is a B, 13 C, 12 D, 11 or less is an F. And I took 2 minutes to fold a nice, neat airplane. And I show up to the class, right? And this is all engineering students. Most of them came with complex, you could have up to, I think, a certain number of square inches of paper. It could have been like 15 sheets of paper together. Some of them had these massive things, parachutes with weights. Some of them had rubber bands and ailerons and weighting systems. And mine was one piece of paper folded, took me 2 minutes. We go on the roof of the building. I fly it. It's in the air, I think, 7 or 8 seconds. I have an F, but we have the whole class to get our grade. So I run down 3 flights of stairs. I grab my piece of paper, and then I remembered that there was a computer lab on the first floor, and I ducked in, and I emptied out 3 printers worth of paper,
Oh, wow.
probably 600 pieces of paper. And I run back up the steps with my one nice 2-minute airplane and 600 pieces of paper. I launched the first one, still an F. I crumple really quickly, 30-second airplane, fold one. It looks terrible. I toss it, and it does this nice, slow, controlled glide. It's in the air for probably 10 seconds, longer than the fancy one. And I thought, wow, there's no point in spending 2 minutes to fold it nice. And then I had this idea that I could just hold up a sheet of paper and let it flutter down and see how it does. Take zero manufacturing time, right? And just drop a sheet of paper. And I could even drop 20 at a time. And if one of them is in the air for 15 seconds, I'm good.
Right.
So I start doing this. And it was probably sheet number 100 that was in the air for 17 seconds.
Wow.
So I have an A. I have an A, right? My professor was a consultant. He consulted for some of the biggest companies in the world, all Fortune 100 companies. And he only taught a class here and there. And I asked him at the end of the semester, I had an A in his class. I had the highest grade in his class total. I had a 4.0 after my first year of engineering school. And I said, would you write me a letter of recommendation so maybe I could do some consulting work while I'm in school? And he said, Mr. Fanning, I can do that. He writes me a letter of recommendation. He doesn't give it to me. He puts it in the career planning, career services, building and on campus, way at the other end of campus. And he says, oh, Mr. Fanning, your letter is in the career services. And I'm thinking, like, you're here, I'm here. Why couldn't you just bring it to me?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the kid who knows everything, right? Kid who knows everything, a little bit of a little attitude. I go over there to career services and I ask to, access my file, and there's this letter and it's on his consulting letterhead. And I'm immediately thinking, this is phenomenal. I'm going to send this. I'm going to send my resume to some consulting firms. I'm going to start consulting when I'm 18 or 19 years old. I take the letter, I look at it. It says one sentence total. It says, Jonathan Fanning has a lot of talent and does just enough to get by.
Oh, wow.
And I just stared at it. And honestly, I'm thinking, like, can I just do something with that? Can I just print it, keep the letterhead and print? What do you do with that?
Oh,
His signature right there. I read it a few times as I'm walking across campus, like getting madder and madder. And I'm thinking, I'm going to go talk to him. And then I thought, no, I'm never going to talk to this guy again. I'm done with this guy. But see, the crazy thing is, Sergio, frying pan moments. Every now and then somebody pops into our life and tells us a message that we really, really need, even if we do not at all want it. And we don't always say thank you in the moment. But game changer in that closing the gaps is getting one more person in your life who values you enough, cares enough about you, and has the courage to step in and say, like, look. And I think that professor, I think he knew me better than I knew me. I think he knew me well enough to know that if he said it to me face to face, I would probably just argue.
Right.
But I think he knew that if he wrote it down, I'd have to read it, and then I'd have to do something with it. What an experience. Frying pan moment, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, iron cast pan moment, seriously.
Yeah.
But so what did that do? Did that create some fuel for you to what action? What took place after? I mean, this is a remarkable story.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it changed a lot of things. I think one of the big ones, and I think it's a lesson all of us could do something with, is that the world will kind of put out there this idea of 15 seconds is an A, like success is this. And you have to step back and say, like, first of all, what am I actually capable of? And the grade is not the 15 seconds in the air. It's not the A of the class. The grade is more relative to how close did you get to your potential.
Oh, I love that. And I love that. Love it.
Yeah. And so often people are like, I'm doing pretty good. Well, compared to your potential, I don't know. Like, because we love to, like, there's a subconscious level of questions that say, like, how am I doing compared to the world around me? And it's a default question, but it's not the question of how am I doing compared to who I could be. I was speaking in Philadelphia for a pretty big conference, and I was speaking on innovation. I did my TED talk on creativity, and at the end of the conference, this woman comes up. I'm signing books, and I sign a book for her, and she says, "Jonathan, you talked about these kind of 5 things that world class innovators do." She said, I think I'm pretty innovative in the way I run my business and all these things. What should I do?" She said, "I love what you talked about, but what should I do with it?"
Mhm.
And I thought, well, I don't know. I have to figure you out first. I have to understand you a little better first. I said, "Are there any things that really, really matter to you? Like any things that you wish you could impact, or maybe you're already involved in impacting, but you'd love the impact to be deeper?" And she kind of was quiet for a couple seconds, and then she told me about a cause that she was involved in outside of her normal business and outside of. And I said, "Well, what do you do with that cause?" And she told me, and she said, "Oh, what are you getting at?" I said, "Well, we were talking about one of the pieces of the world class innovators is they tend to pursue phenomenal questions." And I said, "Well, why don't you 10x the impact you have on that cause over the next 2 years?" And she said, "That would be so worthwhile." And I saw her later that day, and she said, I'm in this conference, but I'm on the track of that. Like, how do I get closer to the potential impact I could have,
Right.
rather than comparing the impact I have to the people around me? Because she was giving a
Just
lot to this
shift it.
cause.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she knew that she could have a deeper impact, but she had to really shift the way she looked at the cause at her time. She said, "I'm going to have to shift some of the things with how I interact in my business." He said, "I have an incredible team. I think I can pull away for a week every month and just pour that week into this cause." And I mean, it was so amazing to see her eyes, but her whole body, her whole being just like on fire, with this. You're right. 15 seconds is not an A here. It's
Yeah.
like, what could I actually do? And maybe it's 45 seconds, right? Maybe it's
Yeah.
10x the impact on that cause over the next couple of years, or maybe it's impact that cause in a way that 100 years from now, your impact is still being felt.
Man, legacy, right? Legacy of the impact that
Mhm.
you're creating. Man, I love that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and one another thing I wanted to touch on, and Jonathan, it's the importance of having people around us, proximity.
Hmm.
Talk to us
Yeah,
a little bit about proximity and mentorship.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's a good expression that kind of like we rise and fall to the level of a handful of people we spend the most time with. Yeah, and most of us, if you look at your calendar, most of us spend time with the same 5 or 10 people, like day after day after day after day, week after week. But then when you come in contact with somebody who sees the world bigger or is doing something different, or like they can be a match in your life. And I was actually in San Antonio on a panel talking about mentorship, and as I'm talking, I'm thinking like, th- it's this question that we wrestle with, of do I empty my cup or do I fill their cup? And I don't think it's either of them. I think it's in a way both of them, but not really. And I say not really
Hmm.
because I think it's getting close enough, getting your cup close enough to their cup to where you see what they really need. And then you can
Oh,
say, you know
yeah.
what, they don't need everything I have. For example, like let's say you've learned 10 incredible lessons in your life, 10 just like life changing lessons. And you get close enough to that person to realize that they need lesson number three. They don't need lesson number four, five, six, seven, two, one. They need
Yeah.
lesson number three right now, nothing else. Right? If you try to pour all 10 into them, there's a really good chance they don't hear any of them. Or maybe they
Oh,
try to apply
man.
lesson one, and
Yeah.
but if you get close enough to them, then you could see that, okay, you know what, the most important thing for this person right now is just like, hey, when you're here, be here. right? Or the most important thing for you right now is get feedback regularly, because you're doing things, which is great, but you're going to bump into walls, and you need feedback to find out where the hole in the wall is, or how to get over the wall or around the wall. And it's not easy. And I would flip that around too. Get around people who do that for you. Get around people who have. We've been doing research for another book, and we find that the most amazing mentors tend to have wisdom and will. They have the wisdom
Oh,
to
yeah.
know what you really need, and then the will to try to give it to you. Try to, like that. My professor in college, right? They have the
Yeah.
guts to. Lots of people can see that you need something, but not all of them have the courage
Yeah,
to.
and that's a skill from a mentor, and also the openness, and it's a combination of having that proximity to know how you will react and find a different avenue of delivery. I love that
Yeah,
combination. What did you just say? The wisdom and will. Man, that's
wisdom and will. Yeah,
powerful.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah. And
powerful.
even the timing can shift, right? Because that professor, let's say, fast forward 5 years in my life, maybe that would have not been a good way to do it, right? Like, I mean, we all go through ups and downs. If I was at a down and he did that, I might have been like, he's right. I might have gone down further.
Yeah,
So the wisdom to know the person, to know the timing, to know the way to deliver, that's that's something worth studying right there.
yeah, man, that is awesome. Man, Jonathan, it's been amazing having you on I Love Fridays, and I'm pretty sure that there's an early careers, there's a person going through something today that we'll find something and that we can interact as a community. And if you had a few words for a younger generation or a person that's starting or shifting into a new environment, what would that advice be on this Friday?
Oh, a really quick piece. I'll tell you, I was flying to Houston, Texas, and a guy sits down next to me, and it was like a Twilight Zone moment. I mean, I realized within like a minute that he was me, but like 10 years younger. I don't know if you've ever had that happen where you meet someone that you're like, they're exactly
Yeah,
where you were 10 years ago. And
yeah,
we talked for a
absolutely.
while, and he says, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do?" And I said, "I do. I kind of write books. I do leadership work with a lot of companies and people." And he said, "Oh, I'm in this position. I just got into this. I just got promoted here. What if you could give me like just one piece of advice? What do you tell me?" And just like those two cups, the 1 to 10, the number three, I'm sitting there thinking like, if I told him three things, he probably doesn't remember any of them.
Right.
So what do I say? So I told him something that um, I stole. I stole it from Patch Adams. I don't know if you know Patch Adams, the doctor that traveled around the world, help him. Anyway, they made a movie about him. But Patch Adams said, "Tell me who your role models are, and I'll tell you what
Mm.
kind of person you're becoming."
Wow.
And I told this guy that I said, like, who's a role model for you as a leader? Because you will unconsciously be trying to pull their lessons into your life. If you don't have one, go get one. If you have one, study their life more deeply and like pick one thing. What's the one lesson out of their life you really want to weave over the next 3 months, 6 months, year, 2 years?
Ah,
Because you don't need
man.
35
Love it.
lessons. You don't need 35, but
Right.
you need one. And I mean, I could give you dozens of those people, but probably everybody listening has at least one role model out there where you go, yeah, you know what? If I could just put one thing from their life into mine, big difference.
Wow, man, I love that. I love that. And Jonathan, in earlier conversations as we were exploring for today, you mentioned something to me, and you said, I love something that Walt Disney uh,
Mm,
did and said once. I want the
yeah,
audience to hear that because that is
sure.
one of those moments. Because I believe that he's one of your role models.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've read probably every biography written about Walt Disney, partly because he was one of those people that said, he asked the question, what if, all the time. all the time. I know, I think you mentioned it's one of your favorite questions, but he would always
It
ask, like,
is.
what if there was this? What if there was this? What if we could
Yeah.
make that? And
Yeah.
yeah, Walt Disney had this little routine about Fridays, actually, for the last almost 3 years of his life. He would go walk across his office to the Sherman Brothers office, and they were working on all the songs for the Jungle Book, the Bare Necessities, and, like, all the songs from that. And they wrote all the Mary Poppins songs. They wrote "It's a Small World." He'd go into their office and he'd ask them what they were working on, and they would tell him this song, and he'd say, well, play a little bit of it, and they'd play it, and he'd sing along, and he'd say, oh, what if we had the bear sing that? What if we had the snake? What if we had the tiger, the whatever, Shere Khan in the jungle, dancing or prowling to that? And the Sherman Brothers said that Walt would turn the office into an idea factory, which is an
Mm.
unbelievable phrase. I mean, imagine if people describe you like that. Whenever Sergio shows up, he turns our meeting into kind of an idea factory. Like, he's a spark for just great ideas. So Walt would do this, and then a little while into this conversation, he'd say, "Play the song." And the Sherman Brothers knew what he meant. They would sit down, one of them at the piano, and play the song, and they would sing the song. Walt Disney would go over to the window quite often and just look out the window while they played the song. They said sometimes he'd walk over to the piano and sing along. Sometimes he'd have tears streaming down his face while they played this song. Every Friday, Friday after Friday after Friday after Friday. And they'd finish the song, and then Walt Disney would walk out of the room, and on his way out, he'd say, "That's what it's all about, fellas. Have a great weekend." And I made
Man,
a video about this because,
wow.
yeah, oh, unbelievable, yeah. And
Yeah.
the song was "Feed the Birds" from Mary Poppins. Tuppence a bag, with tuppence a bag. Feed the birds. The woman is singing on the side of the church steps in London. I think it was St. Paul's. And what Walt was saying is, like, the point of your life is to make a difference. And so often it's little tiny things like feeding a bird, like spending time with one person, like really connecting with somebody after a meeting, or slowing down to send somebody an email. Hey, how's it going? Thanks so much for, something you said to me 20 years ago made a difference in my life. Thanking that professor. And Walt Disney built this reminder into his every Friday for the last 3 years of his life.
That's
All of us
awesome,
need like
man.
something like that. All of us too.
Wow, man. What a way to wrap this up, Jonathan. I mean, if I can wrap this up in one sentence, it would be happy Friday and go be a beacon of ideas to the person
Mm,
that you run into every day. Man, I just want to
mm.
say thank you, and I appreciate the time and the insight and all the sharings from you. And I hope we get to connect again in our audience with another topic. But I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye bye.